Martin Luther King Jr. stands as one of the most influential leaders of the 20th century, a moral force whose vision of justice, equality, and peaceful resistance transformed the social landscape of the United States. As the most prominent voice of the civil rights movement, King articulated a philosophy of nonviolence rooted in Christian ethics and Gandhian teachings, mobilizing millions and reshaping the national conscience. His life and work remain enduring symbols of the struggle for human rights and the belief that social change can be achieved without resorting to violence. Historical context: a nation divided. In the mid-20th century, the United States was marked by stark racial divisions. Segregation in the South was not merely a social norm but a legally enforced system reinforced by the Jim Crow laws. African Americans faced systemic discrimination in education, employment, housing, public services, and the electoral process. Their civil and human rights were routinely violated, and violent intimidation, often ignored or supported by authorities, maintained the racial hierarchy. Amid this context, a new generation of African American leaders sought to dismantle segregation and racial injustice. They believed that moral appeal, legal challenges, economic pressure, and mass mobilization could bring about structural change. Among them, Martin Luther King Jr. emerged as the movement's most charismatic and unifying figure, bringing together a diverse coalition of activists, organizations, and communities. The making of a leader. Born in Atlanta in 1929, King grew up in a middle-class, religious household. His father, a respected pastor, instilled in him the importance of dignity, community leadership, and intellectual curiosity. King's academic achievements took him from Morehouse College to the Crozer Theological Seminary and later to Boston University, where he earned his doctorate. Perhaps the most defining aspect of his intellectual formation was his exposure to the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. King was deeply moved by Gandhi's campaign of non-violent civil disobedience, which had succeeded in challenging British rule in India. Combined with his Christian belief in agape, universal, redemptive love, King developed a philosophy that viewed non-violence not only as a political strategy but as a moral imperative. Montgomery and the rise of a national figure. King's emergence as a national leader came almost unexpectedly. In December 1955, Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white man on a Montgomery bus. Local activists called for a bus boycott and elected King, then a young and relatively unknown pastor, as the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association. The Montgomery bus boycott lasted 381 days, during which the African American community endured harassment, arrests, and economic pressure. King's steady leadership, calm, articulate, and rooted in moral conviction, helped maintain unity and resolve. When the U.S. Supreme Court ultimately ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional, the boycott became a national symbol of peaceful resistance and thrust King into the spotlight. The philosophy of nonviolent resistance. For King, nonviolence was not passive acceptance, it was active, courageous resistance to injustice. He articulated 6 fundamental principles that guided his movement. 1. Nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people, seeking to confront injustice without inflicting harm. 2. The goal is reconciliation, not the defeat of the opponent. 3. Attacks are directed at injustice, not at individuals. 4. Suffering can be a powerful force for social transformation. 5. Nonviolence avoids not only physical violence but also internal violence of the spirit. 6. The universe is guided by justice, right ultimately triumphs. These principles were continually tested as activists faced police brutality, hatred, and imprisonment. Yet King insisted that nonviolence was both morally superior and strategically effective, as it revealed the brutality of segregation to the broader public. Key campaigns in the civil rights struggle. Throughout the 1960s, King led or participated in numerous campaigns designed to challenge segregation, secure voting rights, and expand economic opportunities. Birmingham, Alabama, 1963. Perhaps one of the most decisive confrontations occurred in Birmingham, a city notorious for racial violence. King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, coordinated marches, sit-ins, and boycotts designed to pressure local authorities. The violent response, police dogs, fire hoses, and mass arrests, shocked the nation after being broadcast on television and published in newspapers. During this campaign, King wrote the Letter from Birmingham Jail, one of the most important documents of the civil rights era. In it, he defended nonviolent direct action, criticized the white moderate, and articulated the moral urgency of confronting injustice. March on Washington, 1963. Later that year, King delivered what would become his most iconic speech, I Have a Dream, during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Addressing more than 250,000 people, King envisioned a nation where racial equality would finally be achieved. The speech's profound moral force helped rally public support for major reforms. The following year, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed segregation in public accommodations and employment discrimination, was passed, due in large part to the momentum generated by the movement King helped lead. Selma and the right to vote, 1965. One of the most dramatic moments in the struggle for voting rights occurred in Selma, Alabama. Peaceful demonstrators were attacked by state troopers on what became known as Bloody Sunday. The images of violence again galvanized national outrage. King joined the campaign, and the subsequent marches from Selma to Montgomery captured global attention. The protests culminated in the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which prohibited racial discrimination in voting. Expanding the struggle, poverty and war. By the mid-1960s, King came to believe that racial justice was inseparable from economic justice. He launched the Poor People's Campaign, which sought to unite Americans of all races in demanding fair wages, housing, and social protections. King saw poverty as a form of structural violence and argued that addressing racial inequality required transforming economic systems. His outspoken opposition to the Vietnam War also marked a turning point. King condemned the war as immoral, arguing that violence abroad undermined justice at home and drained resources from social programs. This stance cost him support among some political allies, but it reinforced his commitment to universal justice. Assassination and enduring legacy. On April 4, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, where he had traveled to support striking sanitation workers. His death sparked mourning across the world and widespread unrest in American cities. Yet his message of peace and justice continued to inspire generations. Today, King's legacy is visible in legislation, social movements, public consciousness, and global struggles for human rights. His birthday is observed as a national holiday in the United States, symbolizing his impact on American democracy. Conclusion: Martin Luther King Jr. remains a towering figure in the history of human rights. Through his leadership, moral clarity, and unwavering commitment to nonviolence, he reshaped American society and offered the world a model for peaceful social transformation. His dream of a just and equal society continues to guide movements for civil and human rights across the globe.